What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We got how the New York Jets became the saddest team in sports. Let's check this out.
The Jets of 2024, most colossal and embarrassing failures in sports history. And that sticks
They
to
had
all
so much fucking hype.
Trade for Jerry Jeudy,
No reason.
who I think has 1,000 receiving yards for the Browns. They were going to trade with the Broncos, and then Woody Johnson, I think, found out from his sons that Jerry Jeudy didn't have a good Madden rating.
The New York Jets are one of the...
I know damn well they didn't trade for Jerry Jeudy because of his Madden rating. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to shout some niggas out, bro. What the fuck?
Sports. They're known as
Jeudy balled out this year too.
That will find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws.
L Sons, bro. L Sons.
The joke is
like real shit.
True, or is it? In 2025, the New York Jets have once again failed at the hands of Aaron Rodgers and Joe Douglas. But was it really their fault? Are the Jets historically as bad
yes,
as
it is.
say they are? Whose fault is the failure of the Jets both historically and currently?
The whole front offense gotta be to blame, bro. Real shit.
Tennis player have to do with the current failings of the New York Jets. Before we get to the content, we are starting a baseball channel called Uni Diamond Talk. We're giving away 10 copies of MLB The Show to a subscriber that turns on their notifications on that channel. I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. Now that we get all that out of the way.
Alright, let's skip over this.
Chase years to 1963, back when the New York Jets actually played in New York City. Shea Stadium to be exact. The New York franchise had finally changed their name from the Titans to the Jets to honor the city's new LaGuardia Airport. Or if you ask former Jets owner Sonny Werblin, it was literally because Jets rhymed with Mets and it was good marketing. A few years later in 1965, the Jets changed everything by drafting Joe Namath second overall in the AFL draft, and history would be made. As we all know, Joe Namath wasn't just a quarterback, but he was an icon. Broadway Joe was the mascot of New York City, and for the first time in history, the Jets weren't little brothers to the Giants. They were actually the premier football team of New York City.
You were talking about the team. Yeah, what team? The team that you were supposed to be with.
Oh. Anyway, we got a good team.
Another in-depth analysis from Joe Namath.
It certainly also helped that just a few years after drafting Namath in 1968, the Jets won the third Super Bowl ever played. But just 2 years later in 1970, the AFL-NFL merger occurred, meaning that the Jets were now direct competitors of the New York Giants. This was the golden age of Jets football. They had championship bragging rights over their crosstown rivals. Their quarterback was the icon of the league and pop culture, and there was no going down from here. I mean, hell, they even drafted future Hall of Fame running back John Riggins in the first round of the 1971 NFL Draft, who notoriously won Super Bowl MVP and brought the team another Super Bowl championship. Wait, actually, no, that was actually the Washington Redskins. Because after 4 years with the Jets, they chose not to re-sign Riggins, and instead, he went to the Redskins, where he would firmly cement his Hall of Fame status. But more on that later. Unfortunately, as a matter of fact, it actually was entirely downhill from here. From 1970 to 1980, the New York Jets did not finish with a record over 500 a single time.
Damn.
Pivotal mistakes like in 1978, when they drafted tackle Chris Ward 4th overall, just a few picks ahead of future Hall of Famer James Lofton. In 1980, the Jets took Lam Jones 2nd overall ahead of Anthony Munoz, who is arguably the greatest offensive tackle of all time, who was selected 1 pick later. They took him over Art Monk as well, who was also drafted in the first round. Munoz and Monk would go on to become Hall of Famers, while Jones played 5 seasons in the NFL, never eclipsing the 800-yard mark.
I know they were sick.
It's unfair to blame it entirely on drafting, though. Over that same time period, the team drafted Mark Gastineau, the franchise's all-time leader in sacks, and Richard Todd, a solid Joe Namath replacement, but that's it. They missed out on Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer, and in return got decent but not great players. The 1980s were slightly better. Sure, they didn't win their division a single time, but they actually had good teams. During the 1982 strike season, the Jets finished the season 6-3, and actually made it all the way to the AFC Championship game against a pre-Marino Dolphins team. But in classic Jets fashion, the team laid a goose egg and lost the game 14-0. Remember that?
I know that game was boring. 14-0.
Drafted and didn't re-sign. Yeah, he ended up winning Super Bowl MVP this season and led the Redskins to a championship against the Dolphins. So I think it's pretty safe to say this season probably would have ended up differently if the Jets didn't just let a Hall of Famer walk in free agency. For reference, here's just how good Riggins was.
I hit Riggins one time on a slant. Golly, the sky just went whoosh.
He's just such
He's
a
a load.
big load. He was
Pause.
Derrick Henry for that time. After that, it was back to mediocrity for the Jets. After losing that conference championship game in the 1982 season, the Jets would win one playoff game in the next 15 years. One
Oh my
playoff win
gosh.
in 15 seasons. We talk a lot about the Saddest
Bro, that is,
of the
bro,
Las
that is gotta be like the most down bad shit as an organization ever, bro.
Vegas Raiders, the
One
failure of
playoff
the
win in
Jacksonville Jaguars,
15
or even
seasons.
the pitifulness of the Chicago Bears. The only franchise that comes close to the Jets in terms of despair and failure is the Cleveland Browns. There are countless absurdly funny stories from this 15-year period, and if I were to tell you all of them, then this video would probably be 5 hours long. So let me tell you my favorite. In 1993, the Jets fired Bruce Coslett after 4 disastrous seasons and hired their own defensive coordinator, a 43-year-old Pete Carroll. Carroll was a fantastic defensive coordinator the year prior, as he led the Jets to the 6th best defense in terms of points allowed. And although he would lead the Jets to a mediocre 6-10 record in his first season as head coach, it really wasn't his fault. He was working with a past his prime boomer Esiason. Johnny Johnson was his starting running back, and if you don't know who that is, I don't blame you. And Rob Moore was his wide receiver 1, who granted was actually a pretty good player, but he didn't have his best years until he was in Arizona. But as I mentioned, it was just
Everybody be having their best seasons once they leave the Jets, huh?
Pete Carroll as a head coach.
What did I tell you about the Jets organization, bro?
Develop him in his second season.
Yeah.
Just kidding. The Jets would fire Pete Carroll, who would go on to become one of the best
After
coaches in
1
both
year?
college football and professional football.
I don't be
And
understanding why
Rich
teams be
Kotite,
doing
why
that,
was
bro.
that? Because Leon Hess, the owner of the Jets at the time,
That nigga
was
got a
obsessed
big-ass
with him. He
forehead.
loved Rich Kotite because, to paraphrase Hess's words, he wanted to hire a winner. And he even named him the de facto general manager. So how would this work out? Well, over the next 2 years, Rich Kotite would win 4 games and went a combined 4-28 with the team. Oh yeah, he was also given general manager duties, so he drafted Kyle Brady over Hall of Famer Warren Sapp.
Oh, how we all wanted to believe
Nah,
Leon
bro.
Hess's bold move back in 1995 of firing Pete Carroll too soon and hiring Rich Kotite would turn this sad sack Jets franchise around. And oh, how we all ignored how the Eagles had just disintegrated under Kotite, losing 7 straight before he got another job with the Jets. But that's the way it is when the new guy is introduced. That was then. This is now, Leon Hess is now 82, and another Jets coach bites the dust without a winning record.
Just to be clear, Rich Kotite wasn't like some sort of coaching
Like,
guru
I ain't gonna lie, bro. We need a lot more, like, younger goddamn coaches, younger, you know what I'm saying, general managers and shit, bro. Cause having these niggas that are like pushing 90, being like in charge of the team, that shit is not working no more, bro.
Sure,
Take Jerry Jones, for instance.
10-win and an 11-win
Like,
record
gang.
during his first 2 seasons with the team, but he failed to even make the playoffs the next 2 seasons before getting hired. To make it even more apparent how bad Rich Kotite was, here's one of my favorite stories about him directly from an NBC affiliate back in 1991. The Eagles scored a touchdown with 5:27 left against their division rival Dallas Cowboys, cutting their deficit to 11 at 24-13. Against objections from his staff, Kotite went for a 2-point conversion. I can already imagine how people felt about this back then. Maybe Kotite was ahead of his time. Analytics! But the result was disastrous. Randall Cunningham was stopped short of the end zone, and afterwards, Kotite blamed the error on the weather. It was raining very heavily at the time. And we looked at the
So
chart,
if the
and we
weather is fucked up, why not take the extra point? The fuck?
read the chart. Kotite had a chart suggesting when an extra point should be kicked and when a 2-pointer should be attempted. But since there was no protective sheet on top of it, the ink ran in the rain. Like, dude, you are an NFL coach with your entire staff screaming at you to kick the extra point. But instead, since some rain messed up the ink on your play sheet, you decided to go for 2? I mean, I have so many questions. I mean, for one, how did the rain mess up the analytics that tell you when to go for 1 or 2? Like, you're telling me all the other notes are fine? And also, like, if it's all messed up, then why not ask your special teams coordinator? I really don't get it. This is the guy they ditched Pete Carroll for. And it would get way worse from here. After a
Then
short
Pete Carroll going on to be a Hall of Fame head coach, bro.
disastrous stint with the Jets.
Like, Pete Carroll definitely gonna be a Hall of Famer, though.
Become
Know
the
what I'm saying?
greatest head coach of all time, Bill Belichick. But it would only
Crazy.
last for about 6 days. You see, Bill Belichick was Bill Parcells' prodigy as his defensive coordinator, but he wasn't the man the Jets wanted. The Jets wanted Bill Parcells. But since Parcells Parcells' contract with the Patriots stated that he could not coach anywhere else, the Jets hired Parcells as an advisor. But like, come on, be serious. He wasn't hired as an advisor, he was hired to be the head coach behind the scenes. This was so obvious that the Patriots threatened legal action. But after NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue stepped in, he would broker a deal that would allow Parcells to become the next head coach of the Jets. But to make up for the stipulation in Parcells' contract, they would need to give up first, second, third, and fourth round picks.
Damn!
Grateful, as Mr. Harris alluded to Bill Belichick for his
that's what y'all get, bro, trying to be sneaky and shit.
And rest assured that'll be reciprocated in every way that I am able to do so for a long period of time for him.
Now, under Parcells and Belichick, the Jets would have a decent 1997 season. In 1998, the Jets would finally find success again as they went 12-4. They even made it all the way back to the AFC Championship game in 1998, only losing to the Denver Broncos, who could only be described as a super team that year. But it was over. The long decade-and-a-half wait for Jets fans was finally over, and the team was competitive again. Journeyman, former #1 overall pick Vinny Testaverde was finding his stride in New York. Newly acquired running back Curtis Martin was a bulldozer on the ground. Former #1 overall pick Keyshawn Johnson was finally showcasing his #1 overall talent. Bill Parcells was the grizzly old proven head coach, while Bill Belichick was the young up-and-coming coordinator who would take over the mantle when the time was right. Everything was going well, for one season that is. After the conference championship appearance, the Jets would go 8-8, and after just 3 years, Bill Parcells would step down as the head coach of the Jets and picked his boy wonder coordinator Bill Belichick to replace him. To date, Bill Parcells is the only Jets coach to lead the team with a winning record after coaching at least 2 seasons. Bill Belichick was next in line to lead the Jets and even had his own press conference to announce the decision, but just 24 hours later, he would change his mind.
Damn, hey, shit, I don't blame him, nigga. Then went to their division rival and started spanking their ass every year.
For reference, Bill Belichick literally wrote down on a napkin that I resign as head coach of the New York Jets. He didn't even have the decency to spell out head coach of the New York Jets. It was HC of the NYJ. And soon after, Belichick was announced as the next head coach of the New England Patriots. But since the Jets technically still had a contract with Belichick, things got a little strange. Once again, Commissioner Paul Tagliabue had to step in and brokered yet another deal between the Jets and Patriots that sent Belichick over to the Patriots for a future first-round pick. But back to Belichick's original statement, he mentioned something about Jets' new ownership, and what he was referring to was Woody Johnson's massive purchase of the Jets for over $600 million. This was just 8 days before Belichick was announced as head coach of the Jets, so he probably felt that his job as head coach wasn't as secure as it would have been prior to the sale, but thus brought a brand new era of New York Jets football, the Woody Johnson era. To replace Bill Belichick, the New York Jets hired longtime Parcells assistant Al Groh, who, to be honest, wasn't a bad head coach. He led the team to a 9-8 record in his first season with the team, but resigned in favor of coaching the University of Virginia, which is kind of hilarious because in the span of 1 year, the Jets had Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, and Al Groh all resign. Replacing Groh wasn't really easy though. After the 2001 season, Bill Parcells resigned from his position in the Jets front office, meaning there wasn't an elite football mind leading the team forward anymore. However, unlike the Jets of the past, they somehow made the right decision and hired Herm Edwards. Edwards was a local kid from New Jersey who, under Tony Dungy in Tampa, helped create one of the best defenses in the NFL. It also helped that they had Warren Sapp, the man Jets passed on a few years prior, and John Lynch, and Derek Brooks, but hey, let's give Herm his W. Edwards was one of the top head coaching candidates in the entire NFL, and Edwards would lead the Jets to the playoffs in his first 2 seasons, even winning the division in 2002. But more importantly, Chad Pennington, the Jets' first-round pick from 2 years prior, was ready to take the reins from Vinny Testaverde. In his first year starting in 2002, Chad Pennington was actually really good. He led the NFL in completion percentage, threw 22 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, and led the Jets to their first division title since 1998. What this means is that since 1969, yes, you heard that correctly, 1969, the only 2 coaches to win their division for the Jets were Herm Edwards and Bill Parcells. So let's just recap where the Jets were after 2002. They had their head coach of the future in Herm Edwards, they had their quarterback of the future in Chad Pennington, new ownership in Woody Johnson, and had made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1986. The Jets were back. It was time for them to take back New York from the Giants. So how did they follow up 2002? 2002 by going 6-10 and
Oh my
finishing
gosh,
last in
bro.
their division. That's gotta be the most Jets thing
Yo,
ever.
they can never
To
be
fair to Herm
consistent,
Edwards,
huh?
Chad Pennington did sustain a career-altering left wrist injury, which altered his elite play-action fake for the rest of his career. After the season, the New York Jets broke the bank and signed Chad Pennington to a record $64 million contract. The team was banking on the fact that he'd replicate his incredible 2002
Ain't no fucking
season,
way they
but
that
in classic
stupid.
Jets fashion, he'd sustain injury after injury to the point where after the 2005 season, despite
These
not
niggas
having
love
a
throwing
starting
away
quarterback
money,
for
bro.
a majority of games, the Jets traded Herm Edwards to the Chiefs in favor of hiring Eric Mangini.
So you could always trade head coaches, bro. I ain't even realize that shit till Sean Payton got traded. I ain't even gonna lie to you,
Move
gang.
on from Herm Edwards, I do want to point out that his most memorable moment as a Jets head coach has to be this legendary response to a reporter.
I think I remember this interview.
This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game.
Yeah, I remember this.
Hello? You play to win the game.
That's
You
facts.
don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
Mangini had the honor of coaching Pennington's last non-injury plagued season with the Jets, but unfortunately, he was mediocre at best, which was kind of funny considering Mangini and the Jets somehow were able to go 10-6, meaning that if the Jets had any semblance of solid quarterback play, the team probably would have been at least able to win a single playoff game. Another reason this was funny is because this would be a sentiment Jets fans would have year after year. In fact, I can't think of a more Jets thing than saying, our defense was great this year. Now, if we can find a quarterback, like, how down bad of a franchise do you have to be to have the best quarterback in your franchise's history play in the 1960s? The Browns at least had Brian Sipe and Bernie Kosar. The Bears at least had Jim McMahon and Jay Cutler. Hell, even the Vikings had Tommy Kramer and Dante Culpepper. The New York Jets were, and always have been, allergic to good quarterbacks. Even in Mangini's final season as the Jets head coach in 2008, they brought in Brett Favre, who threw 22 interceptions to 22 touchdowns.
Damn.
Funnier, after throwing 22 interceptions, the next season in Minnesota, Favre threw 33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions.
It's gotta be something with the Jets, bro.
The Jets were just not allowed to have a good quarterback until 2009.
Are the Jets cursed or some shit?
I wanted to be. You know, I understand that.
Is there something going on behind the scenes we don't know that cursed them? It's gotta be something. Like, there's no way a franchise can be this unlucky with drafting QBs, bro. Same goes with the Browns. Like, oh my gosh.
Coming off a 9-win season. I look at that as an opportunity, and an opportunity that we can win immediately.
Rex Ryan has to be the most non-New York New Yorker of all time. Like, I swear, you can just walk down Wall Street or go through Central Park, and you'll find at least 10 guys who look and sound exactly like Rex Ryan. But more importantly, he was right. The Jets did win immediately. Rex Ryan was a key part of the mid-2000s legendary Ravens defense. He was a defensive coordinator there, working with guys like Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, and Ed Reed, which, by the way, I also need to mention that the Jets also passed up on. But even without his Baltimore bullies, Rex Ryan was able to create his own New York nightmare. The 2009 Jets finished with the best defense in the NFL in terms of points allowed, yards allowed, first downs allowed. Basically, any defensive stat that you could imagine, the Jets were the best at. They had studs like Darrell Revis, Sean Ellis, David Harris, Bart Scott, and wait a minute, besides Darrell Revis, none of these guys were legendary, which makes it even more impressive how they had the best defense in football. So what about offensively? Well, let's just say rookie quarterback Mark Sanchez, who was drafted 5th overall.
Everybody only remember him from the butt fumble, bro.
Sanchez threw 8 more interceptions than he did touchdowns. But that didn't stop the underdog Jets from making it all the way to the AFC Championship game, where they were simply outclassed by Peyton Manning's Colts. But in 2010, it was Jets time once again. Mark Sanchez could develop in the offseason. The Jets had an elite game-changing defense, and Rex Ryan had proven that he was capable of going deep in the playoffs. But this time, they weren't underdogs. Take it from Rex Ryan himself.
We got to have a great goddamn training camp, man. Last year, hey, we were under the radar. That's a good place to be.
that. The best place to be is when expectations are high. Get used to it. It's always going to be that way.
I mean, the 2010 Jets were still a dominant force defensively. Sure, they regressed from the #1 defense in terms of yards allowed, but the offense took a significant step. They ranked top 13 in both points and yards, and Mark Sanchez finally threw more touchdowns than interceptions. I remember
Still not good numbers, bro. 17 touchdowns, 13 picks.
They brought in a former top 5 pick in Braylon Edwards, had him team up with a Super Bowl hero in Santonio Holmes. They signed LaDainian Tomlinson, who was 31, but it's still LaDainian Tomlinson. I remember they also brought in Joy Taylor's brother. I mean, the hype surrounding the Jets this season was probably the most hype they've ever had in their franchise's history. Remember, Tomlinson was just 3 years removed from leading the NFL in yards and touchdowns, and the Jets would go 11-5 and would have won the division if they weren't in the same exact division as the New England Patriots and Tom Brady, who won MVP that season and led the Patriots to a 14-2 record. But honestly, it didn't matter, because in the divisional round that year, the New York Jets beat the New England Patriots by a touchdown to go back to the AFC Championship game.
Congratulations. See you in Pittsburgh. Can't wait.
For that week, between the divisional round and the AFC Championship game, it felt like the decades of suffering that Jets fans had felt were gone. For the first time in franchise history, the New York Jets had made it to back-to-back conference championship game appearances, and did it by defeating the man that left a napkin to resign from their head coaching position. But unfortunately, it was all for naught, as they were beaten by the Steelers 24-19. After this loss, on paper, or should I say napkin, there was no reason to think that the Jets couldn't be back. I mean, Mark Sanchez looked like he was developing. The team won more games than a year prior, and Darrelle Revis was the best cornerback in football. There was just one problem. The defense regressed. Mark Sanchez had his best year as a starter, finally being able to break the 20 touchdown mark. But the defense tanked to 20th in points allowed, allowing the Jets to finish 8-8. But there was still hope. This has to be a fluke, right? The Jets had finally looked competitive for the first time since the Parcells era. However, unfortunately for Jets fans, it all came crashing down in 2012. They finished 6-10. Darrelle Revis, the main heart and soul of the team, tore his ACL just 2 games into the season. There was conclusive evidence to also indicate that Mark Sanchez was a colossal bust. In 4 years, despite playing in 2 AFC Championship games, the most memorable thing about him was a moment dubbed the butt fumble, where he just
what's crazy is, bro, this shit happened against the Patriots, nigga.
The most memorable thing about him was a moment dubbed the
You
butt
can't
fumble,
make this
where he
shit
just
up,
runs
bro.
into his center's
You can't.
butt and fumbles the ball in a 30-point blowout loss to the Patriots.
That's tough. Like, how does that even happen, bro? Like, how do you possibly fumble like that?
Rex Ryan's tenure was less than memorable as well. He lost his defensive star via a trade. He had to try and develop Geno Smith, who was drafted in the second round. And after finishing 4-12 in 2014, he was fired in favor of Todd Bowles. But at least there was something to look forward to. Geno Smith had flashes, and maybe Todd Bowles, a veteran coordinator who had been in the NFL for 15 years, could teach him a thing or two. That was the dream until this happened.
All right, back live here inside training camp, live on the field with some breaking news out of Florham Park, New Jersey.
He broke his jaw. How the fuck that happened?
Geno Smith out 6 to 10 weeks with a broken jaw as a result, as Todd Bowles has just said, of a sucker punch from one of his teammates, and that player has been released.
Yeah, so
damn, who the fuck jawed his shit?
Smith got his jaw broken from a punch thrown by one of his teammates.
Who was it?
That's what happened. This isn't some fake script to get him out of games. He actually got his jaw broken by one of his teammates. But as a result,
I ain't gonna lie, bro. I would have had to get my get back. Ain't no fucking way I'm gonna just sit here and let you break my jaw, nigga. Nigga, I'm gonna pull a Myles Garrett on your ass. Real shit, nigga.
The first year head coach
fuck?
had to go with veteran Ryan Fitzpatrick to
Nah,
lead the
Geno
Jets
went
in
out sad with that one.
2015.
I ain't
And
gonna
here's
lie.
the wild part, it worked. The Jets went 10-6 with the defense finishing 4th in yards allowed, and the offense finishing 10th in total yards. Ryan Fitzpatrick had the best season of his career, throwing 31 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. Chris Ivory made the first Pro Bowl of his career at 27 years old with 7 touchdowns in over 1,000 yards. And Brandon Marshall was named an All-Pro, leading the NFL in touchdowns with 14 and hauling in over 1,500 yards. Newly signed Eric Decker contributed to bringing in 12 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards.
That's the wide receiver duo.
They were stacked. They had Demario Davis, Muhammad Wilkerson, Antonio Cromartie, Sheldon Richardson, Leonard Williams, David Harris, and they even managed to bring back Antonio Cromartie, Sheldon Richardson, Leonard Williams.
When the fuck was Leonard Williams on the damn Jets?
David Harris, and they even managed to bring back Darrelle Revis for one last dance. But unfortunately, that last dance somehow wasn't in the cards for this absolutely stacked team. They finished with 10 wins, but that still wasn't enough to make the playoffs in a stacked AFC that year. But they still had all that talent going into the 2016 season, so you would think they'd be able to improve upon a 10-win season. Well, no, because all the names that I listed were off the team by 2016 except for Leonard Williams, who was still on a rookie contract. As quickly as Jets fans were given
did he get traded to the Giants?
Quickly taken
or did they just let him go?
Through an inept front office. Needless to say, the Todd Bowles era was a complete mess after this, with the Jets going through quarterbacks like paper towel rolls. They had Ryan Fitzpatrick, Bryce Petty, Geno Smith, and Josh McCown. But in 2017
Josh
and
McCown was
2018,
so ass,
the final
bro.
2 seasons of Todd Bowles' tenure as the Jets head coach, he was given a gift. The New York Jets had drafted Jamal Adams and Sam Darnold with their first-round picks.
Both were busts at the time. Jamal Adams still a bust. Sam Darnold had a great breakout year this year.
Jamal Adams was named an All-Pro 3 times out of the first 4 years of his career. And Sam Darnold was, well...
Seen ghosts.
So yeah, that's how the Todd Bowles era ended, and they decided to bring in a head coach that was an offensive guru to help Sam Darnold develop. And in came Adam Gase with one of the creepiest introductory press.
Worst thing they could have did was hire that nigga.
History.
Over 3 years, you're gonna have mistakes that you make, and really,
like, why his eyes look like that, bro? Like he, you know what I'm saying? Like he's seeing ghosts like Sam Darnold. Like, what the fuck?
Really, you start creating that list from year to year.
I ain't gonna lie, that shit creeping me out, gang. Like, imagine how his wife feel waking up and this nigga just looking at her like that, gang.
It's really started in this first part of the process.
Okay, ignore what he's saying. Just focus on his eyes. Like, come on, be real. This is not a serious person.
For real, gang.
On the Adam Gase era
Nobody's taking that nigga serious.
I feel like this man should not have gotten this job at all. Let's just evaluate Adam Gase's resume for a second. 0 playoff wins, just 1 winning season. His 2 good seasons as an offensive coordinator came with Peyton Manning, a man known to create his own offenses.
Damn,
and when
Peyton Manning carried him.
His own
Okay,
team ranked
that's what I got from that.
In yards and 23rd in points. Let's not even talk about how Ryan Tannehill turned into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Tennessee the moment he got away from Adam Gase. There's absolutely no reason Adam Gase should have even sniffed the head coaching position.
That was to the help of Derrick Henry.
Cursed and inept that of course he got the job. And in that short time, he completely ruined Sam Darnold. So needless to say, the 2-year stint Adam Gase spent in New York was a complete unmitigated disaster. Also, I do think that it's funny that after Sam Darnold left New York, he completely rebuilt his entire career in Minnesota years later. After that, the Jets would move on to Robert Saleh, who looked like a genuine head coach in the NFL. He had built some dominant defenses with the 49ers, and he did the same thing in New York. Are you starting to see a theme here? The Jets consistently bring in a defensive-minded head coach that has a solid resume.
Like, when are they gonna start bringing in some offensive, you know what I'm saying, minded niggas, bro? Like, that is the only thing that they're missing is good offense. Their defenses, well, besides this year, like, bro, their defenses have been great. So why the fuck you not bringing in an offensive coordinator to be head coach, man? They could have got Ben Johnson. They really missed out on that one. I ain't gonna lie.
Job building a solid defense,
but then they brought in what's the defensive coordinator for the Lions?
Robert Saleh.
I forgot his name already. I ain't gonna lie. But they brought in that nigga to be head coach. So defensive minded coach again. See how that turned out.
NFL draft. But they decided to have a moral victory against the Los Angeles Rams and tanked to number 2. As a result, instead of deciding to draft any of the other incredible players in the 2021 NFL draft, like Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase or Micah Parsons, they decided to draft yet another project quarterback.
Like, why did the Jets do this,
now,
bro?
In Zach Wilson's rookie season, I will
admit, like, and they drafted this nigga solely off of the throw he made at the combine. Like, bro, I will never understand how the Jets work, bro. Like, nigga. So y'all don't watch no film. Y'all just go based off of the combine. Got it.
No help. But in his second year, the Jets had one of the best drafts that we've ever seen in New York Jets history. This
for
is
Sauce and Garrett Wilson,
Breece
Hall,
Garner, Jermaine Johnson, and Breece Hall. I mean, I've never seen a draft class like this. You would think that their general manager would get job security for life for pulling this off. And in 2022, the defense skyrocketed to top 5 in most categories, but the offense was horrible under Zach Wilson. The Jets were in a familiar position that they had been in many times prior. there. They felt like the roster was built perfectly, and the only thing they needed was a quarterback to push them into contention. And as a result, they traded for Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP,
like that,
and debatably one of the quarterbacks of all time. Let me set the scene for the opening day of 2023. It's the anniversary of 9/11. The New York Jets had never had this much hope in their entire franchise's history
and
since
tore his
Jim Namath
Achilles
was on the team. Here comes Aaron Rodgers running out of the tunnel with an American flag.
I mean, he was already dealing with calf tightness too, so
then a few
that's
plays
what made
into
it
the
worse.
game, and Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. If you had not bought into the curse of the New York Jets up until this point, how can you not anymore? Are you kidding me?
You can
This
see
has
that
to be a
shit
sick
pop.
joke. What the actual hell? It goes without saying that Rodgers had to rehab the entire season. And after another season of Zach Wilson, the Jets were forced to trade him because he regressed even further. And honestly, I would regress too if Nathaniel Hackett was my offensive coordinator. Now this brings us to the modern day, the 2024 season. We have completely recapped the entire curse of the New York Jets. But is it really a curse? Well, no, it's not. As we all know, the 2024 New York Jets were somehow even worse with Aaron Rodgers than they were with Zach Wilson. Sure, offensively, Rodgers was putting up better numbers, but as a team, they finished just 5-12, with their offense somehow finishing 8 possessions lower in points scored, and that's after trading for future Hall of Famer Devontae Adams. Oh yeah, and Robert Saleh was fired mid-season, and soon after that happened, the elite defense of the Jets tanked into one of the worst units in the entire NFL. Now, the Jets have told Aaron Rodgers they don't want him back for the 2025 season, which is funny considering just 2 years ago, they were on their hands and knees begging for this man to save their franchise. But as for Aaron Glenn,
yeah, Aaron Glenn, that's the head coach.
The next head coach of the New York Jets. I don't know if I have much hope. Listen, I'm not saying Aaron
Glenn we've seen the trend of them bringing in defensive coordinators to be head coach. I hope this is different, but I don't know. Just based off of they track record, bro, it's not looking too well, bro. I'm gonna keep it a buck.
Turn this horrid franchise around. But if you just take a look at this team's history with defensive coordinators who are hired as head coaches, it starts all the way back with Bill Belichick, who resigned after one day, to Al Groh,
then he went on to win 6 Super Bowls.
Rex Ryan,
Crazy.
Todd Bowles, and Robert Saleh. But here's the thing: I don't think any of those guys are to blame. I mean, just take a look at what happens to each of these coaches once they leave the Jets. Bill Belichick leaves because
I think it's the front office problem, bro. Like the owner, general manager, bro. I think it's just something to do with them for real.
NFC Championship. Darrelle Revis leaves, and he goes on and wins a Super Bowl with the New England Patriots. Geno Smith leaves, and years later is a Pro Bowler leading the Seahawks to the playoffs. Todd Bowles leaves and has cemented himself as a long-term Buccaneers head coach. Sam Darnold leaves, and years later has the single best.
So do y'all think that Zach Wilson might somehow find his way back and, you know what I'm saying, solidify himself as at least a good quarterback somewhere else? You know, not with the Broncos, obviously, because Bo Nix. But if he goes somewhere, you know what I'm saying, say like the Raiders or the Saints, and he starts balling out, that'll kind of solidifies the Jets, like, being the problem when it comes to, you know what I'm saying, producing good quarterbacks, bro.
By a Minnesota Vikings quarterback in franchise history. Hell, even Robert Saleh leaves mid-season and is hired by the Packers as a consultant and helps lead them to the playoffs in one of the most.
And I think he's the defensive coordinator for the Niners again now.
A trend here. Everyone that
what the fuck is A-Rod
gets better. So what's the constant? The Jets. The Jets are the constant. More specifically, the ownership of the Jets. Remember Leon Hess, the guy who owned the Jets before Woody Johnson? He was born in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And not only did he love New York sports, he loved football. So when he had the chance to be part of the group that bought the Jets in 1963, he was jumping over the moon with excitement, especially when he became the sole owner years later. But remember a few more things. He personally fired Pete Carroll after one mediocre year for a head coach who didn't know whether to kick an extra point or go for 2 because there was some water on his notes. He chose not to re-sign the Derrick Henry of the 80s and John Riggins. You can directly connect Leon Hess to multiple decisions over the years that made the New York Jets a bad football team, even going as far as moving the team's stadium from New York City to East Rutherford, New Jersey. Like, come on, dude, what are you thinking? As for Woody Johnson, the man he sold the team to, well, just listen to this.
And then you find out that they were going to trade for Jerry Jeudy, who I think has 1,000 receiving yards for the Browns. They were going to trade with the Broncos, and then Woody Johnson, I think, found out from his sons that Jerry Jeudy didn't have a good Madden rating.
I still don't understand this. Niggas are going off of a video game to see how good and bad players are. Like, bro, that's not the case, gang. There's hella underrated players that are, you know what I'm saying, so low on Madden that are really good in real life. Like, gang, I don't understand it, bro. I really don't. Nigga really listening to his sons. Nigga think he the son of the Jets general manager, bro. Not Jets, the Giants general manager. That told them to trade up and draft Jaden Daniels. Like, bruh.
Make the trade.
You think that's bad? Listen to what else Woody Johnson is letting his 18-year-old Brick Johnson do in the locker room. According to Diane,
he was 8 too?
This Halloween, the Jets registered their first victory since Robert Saleh's firing 4 weeks earlier. It was a significant moment for a struggling team. Aaron Rodgers walked into an energized locker room with a game ball in hand, and it was expected that he was going to give the ball to Jeff Ulbrich, a customary gesture when a coach gets his first NFL win. But before Rodgers could speak, Woody Johnson's teenage son, Brick Johnson, took another game ball and awarded it to Garrett Wilson. In an exchange, the owner's son later posted to Instagram, "That was one of the best fucking catches I've seen in my entire life." Johnson said in a reference to an acrobatic catch that Wilson made in game. Garrett fucking Wilson. Woody then gave Ulbrich the ball that Rodgers had been holding. Multiple players said that the energy felt drained out of the room. I'm sorry. Is this a real football team? You cannot be serious. But a small side note,
that's
Aaron
just
Rodgers, the guy who played in small town Green Bay, Wisconsin for nearly 2 decades. A team that has no owner and unknowingly going into a mess like this.
It's
Also,
Mickey
I'm
Mouse
sorry,
ass
if I'm
franchise,
Jeff
bro.
Ulbrich, and after decades of being in the NFL, my moment is ruined by some 18-year-old trust fund child who goes to Harvard. I'm walking out, not just on the locker room, but my job. Are you kidding me? Granted, the Garrett Wilson catch was pretty amazing.
That shit was
but why is an
nasty.
18-year-old who just started his freshman year at college directing team acquisitions and leading post-game locker room speeches just so he can flex it on Instagram? It seems to me that Woody Johnson is the issue here, not the countless players, executives, and coaches who have churned through the Jets since he bought the franchise over 20 years ago. He is. This mess will not be fixed until one of two things happen. Either Woody Johnson steps back and doesn't make any decisions and just lets people knowledgeable on football make the decisions, or he just sells the team. Look at the Commanders. They were terrible under Dan Snyder's tenure, but as soon
Then they
as he
end up
sells
making it
the
to the
team,
NFC
they're
Championship under
confident
Dan
again.
Quinn.
And they made it all the
You
way
know what I'm
to the
saying?
NFC Championship. I really don't know any other solution to this systemic issue.
And I feel like this is the same thing that's going on with the Cowboys right now. Jerry Jones is the fucking problem. As long as he is the owner, the Cowboys are not going anywhere. So when he decides to step down, or if he, you know what I'm saying, croaks or something like that, you know what I'm saying? That's when Cowboys will finally start to win, bro. Like, real shit. Because they have so much talent, you know what I'm saying? Especially like the last couple years when they've had like, what, 11-5 or whatever record and shit like that. Like, bro, they have been so good, especially offensively at home. And then they just still continue to choke in the playoffs. I think it is a Jerry Jones issue, bro. Like, real shit.
It's a shame, honestly, because the New York Jets play in a huge market. They have loyal, devoted fans who show up week in and week out. But because their ownership is so inept, they have nothing to show for the decades of loyalty. I genuinely hope in the near future that Woody Johnson can find the self-respect to do either of those two solutions. Until then, I see no future in which the New York Jets can sustain a competitive window. The New York Jets are cursed, but not by some mysterious person. They're cursed by terrible ownership. If you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure you drop a like and check out our other content that I'll leave in the end screen. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.
Hey, man. It's a good ass vid. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. You know what I'm saying? Y'all let me know what other NFL videos y'all want me to react to. Without further ado, I'm out. Yeah!
I'm chosen. I'ma make them feel me. Make them people when they chow me. And if you don't know me, I'ma make sure that you know me. I hate to say it, but I really think I'm broke. But I know I'm chosen. I really know I'm chosen. I know I'm chosen. I was just lost a year ago, but now I'm focused. When good at sports, this microphone can be my trophy. Not taking drugs, I found a better way of coping.